Hi everyone, in today's lesson we're going to talk about compositions of functions. Now this is something that you should have learned in Algebra 2, but we are going to review it again here. So basically what a composition of functions, it's just evaluating a function with another function. The best way that I can explain this is if I do an example. So let's look at example number 1. If f of x equals this and g of x equals this, then they want to know what is f of g of 3. It helps a lot to understand what this means if you exaggerate the parentheses a lot. So I basically want you to find f of g of 3. Now, order of operations tells us that we probably should work with the inside first. So maybe let's find what g of 3 is first. So we're going to look at the g of x function, and we're going to find out what g of 3 is. So you should know this. We're plugging in 3 everywhere we see an x. So we get g of 3 equals 9 minus 2. So g of 3 equals 7. So now what can I do with that information? Well, I see here that g of 3 equals 7. So really what I want to find is f of 7, because I found out what g of 3 was and I just replaced it. So now this is my second step of the problem. Now I'm going to plug into the f of x function to find it when x equals 7. So f of 7 equals negative 2 times 7 plus 7. So f of 7 equals negative 14 plus 7. So f of 7 equals negative 7. Okay, so just to recap, my final answer here is negative 7. Because what I did was, I started with g of 3. I figured out that g of 3 was equal to 7. And then I found out what f of 7 was. And really, this is my final answer to this composition. I composed two functions together and got negative 7. So if you want to be technical, your answer can be written as f of g of 3 equals negative 7. If you want to be technical about how you're writing your answer. Okay, let's look at example number 2. They give you two functions, g of x and f of x, and now they want you to write or find f of g of 5. This little circle here is of, so f of g of 5. So here's the definition, that f of g of x is the same thing as saying f with g of x on the inside. So basically, you're just going to rewrite this as f of g of 5. So basically, whatever is out here is what's going to go outside of the parenthesis here. Okay, so what do we need to do first? If I exaggerate those parentheses, I can see that I really need to find g of 5 first. So I'm going to go to the g of x function, and I'm going to plug in 5. So g of 5 is equal to 3 times 5 plus 5. So 15 plus 5 is 20. So now, if I go back over here, g of 5 equals 20, so I want to find now f of 20. So I'm going to go to the f of x function, and I'm going to plug in 20. So 80 minus 10, so f of 20 is equal to 70. So that's my final answer. Again, if you want to be technical, the question was really asking you to find f of g of 5. So we can go ahead and write out what it wants. F of g of 5 equals 70. That is my final answer. Okay, why don't you take a minute and try the third one. Try it on your own and then hit resume when you're finished for the answer. Okay, here's your answer. Okay, so just to review, the first thing that I did was I rewrote f of g of 8 as f of g of 8, so I know what to do first. So g of 8 I did, and I got 4, and then I took the 4 and I plugged it into the f of x and got 80. So again, to properly write my answer, they were asking for this, so I just wrote that as my final answer. If you need to pause the video to copy anything down, now would be the time to do that. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Okay, sometimes I'll ask you to find f of g of x where there's no number in here for the x. We're still going to do it the same way. So first let's set it up what we did on the first page. So this translates to f of g of x. Now this time, like I said, I don't have a number, so all I can do is put what g of x is actually equal to. So if you look over here, it says g of x equals x minus 9. So instead of g of x, I'm going to put what it is equal to. So really the question is asking me to find f of x minus 9. So I have my f of x function, and I want to find f of x minus 9. So that just means everywhere I see an x, I'm going to replace it with x minus 9. So 3x minus 5. So I'm going to put in the x minus 9 here, and then I'm just going to simplify. So I'll distribute and get 3x minus 27 minus 5. Combine like terms, so 3x minus 32. So my final answer, if I want to write it properly, f of g of x is equal to 3x minus 32. Okay, let's do another example. So example number 5 is asking me to find g of f of x. So I always like to again exaggerate, so g of f of x. So now this time, what does f of x equal? Well, it says over here that f of x equals x squared minus 5. So that means the question is really asking me to find g of x squared minus 5. So I start with the g of x function. So g of x, if you want to write it again, is equal to 6x. I want to find g of x squared minus 5. So everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put x squared minus 5. So 6, and then x squared minus 5. We simplify now by distributing. So 6x squared minus 30. If you want to write it properly, we have g of f of x equals 6x squared minus 30. Okay, why don't you try the last example and then hit resume when you're done. This one's a little bit trickier. Okay, here's your answer. Okay, so if you got this, you did the right thing. If not, let's go back and see where you made your mistake. So you wanted to find g of f of x. So f of x is 3x plus 5. So all I want to do now is plug 3x plus 5 into g. So here's the setup. Here's the replacement of x. And what we want to do is do 3x plus 5 squared plus 1. Remember that you have to double distribute, so that's all the work I did here. And then add the 1. And that should be your final answer. If you need to pause the video to copy down the information, by all means do so. And then I'll see you in class tomorrow with questions. Have a good day.